Welcome to Year, Make, Model, Money, the auto parts e-commerce podcast by Data Here to There. In each episode, we break down the key trends, challenges, and opportunities in the aftermarket parts industry and e-commerce. From interviews with industry leaders to tips on streamlining your business, we'll give you the knowledge to stay competitive in today's market. It's time to take your business to the next level with Year, Make, Model, Money.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Barry Alt with Motorhead Digital, and my co-host is Jay Funnell from Data Here to There. We're excited to kick off this episode of Year, Make, Model, Money, the auto parts e-commerce podcast by Data Here to There.
Thanks, Barry. I'm glad to be here. SEMA was great this year, and we've had some time to recover. It's a good time to do a podcast.
Today, we're thrilled to have our special guest, Dan Ziegler from Turn 14 Distribution. Dan is a business partner, integration manager for Turn 14 Distribution and oversees system integrations between Turn 14 Distribution and its customers, vendors, and integration partners. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to start off this as asking a question. How did you end up at Turn 14 Distribution? How'd that all start out with you there?
Sure. So ironically, I went to Drexel University, which is in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I was walking around the career fair. For those who aren't familiar with Drexel, it actually has a co-op program built into many majors. So I had three essentially co-ops or internships as part of my 5-year program. So when I was there, I walked around the career fair looking for my second co-op job, and I ran into the then director of HR for Turn 14 Distribution, who actually pulled me aside at the career fair and was like, "Oh, you're a computer science student," and introduced me to what Turn 14 Distribution was. She said at the time they were in Montgomeryville, and I lived in Montgomeryville, so I was like, "That Montgomeryville?" Because nothing's in Montgomeryville. So it was the shortest commute I'll ever have in my life. It was 6 minutes. It would have been 6 minutes around the corner from my house.
Perfect.
I started working here as an intern. I did 2 internships with Turn 14 Distribution before I became a full-time employee after I graduated in the summer of 2017.
Did you go right into the role you're in now, or did you work your way up to that after? How long did it take you to get where you are now?
So I started on the web development team. So I was just a regular developer. I did work on the API, which I'm sure we'll talk about several times today in the podcast. But I also wrote some random stuff like our warehouse login system was something that was under my umbrella. When I was an intern, I worked on some stuff that's in our vendor portal. So I had a hodgepodge of things that I worked on before I started getting kind of a subject matter expert essentially on our integration platforms. And I started asking what ended up being critical questions like, so if we're going to build an API, how are we going to get our dealers and their developers to actually use it, right? And they're going to ask questions, and they can't ask their sales rep how to code something, right? That's probably not going to end up with a very successful answer.
A lot of people hear API, though, and their eyes roll back in their head. What are you talking about?
Exactly. So, that's definitely something that we started talking about. And then that's when I started going on the path of being not just a developer, but, being almost a developer evangelist, which eventually turned into what is the integrations department today.
Awesome.
So Dan, something special happened to you recently. You won an award from SEMA. It was for being an under 35 visionary. So can you tell us a bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. So I was very surprised, but very fortunate and grateful to have won or be a part of the initial inductees of the Visionary 8 Award. So kind of as you alluded to, SEMA's had since 2012 a 35 under 35 award that they've given to folks, including our own CEO, John Pooley. And it's supposed to recognize essentially up and coming people in the industry. Visionary 8 is kind of a rebrand or refresh of that award. They made it harder this year, and somehow I still managed to get in. So I'm very grateful for that. It's as much as I'm being recognized for award, it's really the culmination of many things, the support of John and Chris, our co-founders, to be able to, actually focus on integrations and being able to do some of the cool things we've done with partners like, Data Here to There, all the leadership from the various departments within Turn 14 who allowed me to work with their teams to kind of get some of these things that we've wanted to get done that have an impact on our dealers and how they integrate with Turn 14. The fact that I have a team and Mark and Eric who do a fantastic job of allowing us to scale, especially in a post-COVID area when everybody wants to get online and everyone wants to sell things in a smarter, not harder way. And, like I said earlier, our partners are key for that, and our growing dealer network, right? We can't do anything without the people who are buying parts from us. So I'm super grateful to be recognized for the impact that Turn 14 and the integrations department has had on the industry thus far. And this is just kind of the beginning for that. So super excited about that.
That is actually very unique that you guys have a dedicated API team. So it's more common that tech stuff is just thrown under IT. So along with maintaining computers and that, but maintaining an API, providing the service for it, working with developers is really a whole separate area.
Yeah, and even I would go so far to say we've really separated almost into 3 buckets, right? We have our classical IT team. We also have our web development team, which is building all the custom platforms, our website, our API, our warehouse management system, some internal apps and tooling that we have at our disposal to keep the business running. And then we have our team, which is kind of like the public-facing evangelists of all that behind-the-scenes tech, right? To get it down to, depending upon what kind of dealer we're talking to, right? Whether it's the dealer that has the full development team who wants to do everything themselves and plug everything in their unique way, right? Or whether it's somebody who's brand new to e-commerce and building their first website and they want to figure out how to do it the right way and in a way that's going to work well, with us and selling aftermarket parts. So it's really nice to be able to have that focus and then also be able to have the support of our partner departments across the company who we collaborate with on a regular basis to kind of make all this look like magic and easy, even though there's a lot of kind of moving pieces behind the scenes to get everything to work and look seamless as it does to our customers and dealers.
It's cool how you separate that out, though, and it's not just underneath the IT umbrella, because it can get, they're 2 different worlds, right? They work in a lot of different of the same things, but customer facing is definitely different than internal facing and managing that IT and team members and stuff like that, right?
Absolutely. And I think that goes back to the fact that one of our co-founders is the CTO of the company, right? He understands that tech is not just something that has to happen. It's kind of a core part of our DNA and our business, and goes back to some of our, core values around efficiency and doing things the right way, right? It's easy to scoop that all up into, it's this magical black box of technology. And, that all should be just scooped up together and put into one box and, forget about it. Whereas there's kind of unique purposes and identities within that, and allowing each kind of entity to operate on its own and then have the freedom to collaborate with each other when it makes sense has been really good to allow us all to move forward on our own paths without being distracted by maybe what each other has to focus on that doesn't impact each other, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. And it actually, I think the customer wins on the customer end. They're the ones that win. In the web development space that I'm in, we run into a lot of things where the IT departments, people point to IT departments as the god of everything, but IT departments know IT. Web is different. And it's different when it comes to facing customer facing things as well. Can you tell us more about Turn 14 distribution? Because a lot of people hear Turn 14 or distribution, they don't totally understand what is it.
Sure. Yeah. So we are a aftermarket distributor of parts. We started out in kind of being in the JDM muscle, JDM space. We expanded to muscle, Euro, truck, and Jeep and those kind of things. We've also played around with EVs as well, catering to that segment. So we've always been in the auto kind of space, right? And that's where we've focused. We've always been B2B, so we exclusively focus on, selling directly to shops, e-commerce companies, those kind of platforms. We don't sell directly to consumer. We think
nobody can walk in the front door and buy parts from you, right?
You can walk in our front door. You won't get very far, unfortunately. We think it makes sense to focus only on our dealers and making their experience as best as possible, as opposed to also on the side competing with them. We also as an aside, we also don't work directly with any of the marketplace platforms either. So we're not also selling our products on Amazon or eBay or Walmart or something like that.
Yeah, so you're not competing with your customers.
No, exactly.
That's good.
We let them do the selling and we do the distributing. And we think having that kind of clear line in the sand and clearly defined roles works best because it allows us to focus on our part and doesn't need to bleed over into where our customers are doing, what they're doing to support their livelihood. Right. So we think that's fair. So we've
that makes sense. You can run into problems with that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's where we think, staying in our lane is important. And that's why we're growing in the spaces where it makes sense for us to grow in, and we're letting our dealers grow in the spaces where they're, specifically supposed to be growing in. So as I alluded to, right, we have the automotive space, that we focused in. So most of our automotive team is based out of Pennsylvania and Michigan. We have, 1.5 million square feet of warehouse space, and we have 4 distribution centers: Pennsylvania, Texas, Indiana, and Nevada. So together, that provides a nice, really rounded coverage of one-day transit time. It's about 60% of the U.S., and the rest is covered in 2 days, assuming we're shipping from your closest distribution center. So we work 7 days a week. So that's both for fulfilling orders, that's for support. So you can call or email into our support team, and there's a live human based in our Horsham, Michigan office who will pick up the phone and answer your question, or, go do the research for you or help you figure out, what the right solution is to the problem that you're having, which I think is really helpful for our dealers to know that they're not alone in this, that they have the support not only of their sales rep, who's obviously their dedicated sales rep who will, help them grow their business and be their kind of champion to do better in the aftermarket space and know what parts to get and what new brands we have and all those kind of things. But we also have the customer support to back it up as well, because we know things happen or questions come up and they need somebody there to answer those questions. Obviously, we've done well in the automotive space. In 2023, we decided to expand our niche and expand into the power sports world. So ATVs, UTVs, two-wheel vehicles. We did that through acquiring the assets of Tucker Power Sports. So since then, we've expanded, down to Texas. We have a Fort Worth campus as well now that has both our sales team, but it also includes some brand and product manufacturing teams as well. So we now have 12 brands under our umbrella that are focusing on apparel, ATV, UTV, and motorcycle aftermarket parts or clothing or apparel, so that we can actually support those aftermarket products as well and expand into that space.
I know we're going to talk a lot about the APIs and online sales, but do you also sell products into like box store, people with a actual location where they can walk in and...
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's essentially, how our business started, and it's still a core part of our customer base today. These can be, repair shops or, chain, repair organizations or whatnot. A lot of them have Turn 14 distribution accounts and use us to kind of, take care of those products, that they need when they have somebody, the old adage, right, of cars on the lift, I need whatever thing to replace, this, or, whether it's our product lines are typically focused around the performance segment, but, there are repair shops that are, use performance aftermarket brands to be able to, increase the performance of a vehicle that they're working on behalf of their, end user. So we definitely cater to that segment as well. Like you said, we were going to talk a lot about e-commerce today. And e-commerce can apply to a brick and mortar store, right? They can spin up an e-commerce store and sell
the products. They can have both, right? They can order products in, they can put on a shelf or use within what they're doing, but also have an e-commerce store with that API connection.
Exactly.
Yeah, actually, sometimes we've seen clients put that right in their shop. They'll just put it on the desk. There's a monitor there. They can turn it around and say, pick your part.
Yep.
It's a live catalog.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, a lot of our dealers use our website like that, just because they can go, the person comes in and says, hey, this is my vehicle, right? And, we're looking for this category of product. And, then you can see everything that's in stock and, figure out, what maybe some of the differences are between the products and figure out what, makes sense for you and the end user. So you can, get that and figure out how quickly you can get it from us so that you can take care of them and get them the product that they need. So yeah. to fast forward to today, right? I think when we started the API, we had about 220,000 SKUs. That was back in 2018. Now we're up to over 650,000 SKUs, 466 brands as of this morning, of which over 120 of them are power sports specifically focused. We have 12 brands that we are making ourselves and distributing out, including things like ProTaper, Hurricane, Quadros, Dragonfire Racing, Answer Racing, and several other brands. And we also have 2 brands that are exclusive to Turn 14 distribution, including Akrapovic, which we're the North American exclusive distributor of, and Dionyse and TCX, which we're the US exclusive distributor of those brands as well.
So I'm just thinking here. So over the years, together we've worked with a lot of different data. So there's like catalog data, there's stock and pricing data, different types of tech systems. So on our end, we'll see different types of e-commerce platforms. They used to be actually quite prolific. There would be, for example, PrestaShop and Magento, and regional ones like Neato in Australia and ePages in Germany. And from our perspective, we were trying to understand all of them and figure out, okay, what are the common pieces? So another aspect of that, though, is what you're just mentioning there about the power sports end of it. So how has Turn 14 adapted to support both automotive and power sports markets? Is it sort of like the data problem where it's like, okay, let's just embrace it all, or are there unique challenges in there?
So, I mean, there's a couple different things we're looking at, right? Like from a sales perspective, a power sports dealer is slightly different than an automotive dealer. The products themselves are different, right, than an automotive dealer. So there are things that are not going to change about the way we do business from a logistics and fulfillment standpoint. We're still going to have the same level of service to deliver products, ship products out the same day. If it's before 7 p.m. Eastern time, we're still going to have, those good transit times or whatnot. So the logistics fulfillment layer in many cases stays the same, or at least on the surface, right, to the end user experience, it stays the same. We've obviously had to make potentially some optimizations and improvements in the logistics that go in the background, right, to support that. But that part is core to our business and built to support any essentially kind of product, so that we can provide that experience to our dealers. To your point, though, there are differences between products, especially when it comes to product data, right? In the automotive world, we're really fortunate to have a data standard, ACES and PIs, that is used pretty prolifically among brands and partners that allow you to generate those files and distribute those files and manage, the portfolio of brands and the portfolio of dealers or distributors that have access to that product data. So it's democratized in many ways, right? And there's a platform, there's a standard, and there's ways to distribute that data. Power sports hasn't gotten to that point yet. If you go to 10 different manufacturers, you'll get 10 different answers on how they do product data and 10 very different CSV or Excel files, from them, with a variety of quality data and things like that, just because there is no standard, right? Everything is in a flat file or something equivalent of that, or a folder with images in it or something to that point. We can't do the same level of scaling without some Turn 14 muscle behind it, right? We just can't take an ACES and PIs file and do what we normally do to it and make it go through the process. There's some more love that needs to be given to that. So we've kind of done a couple different things. But the primary thing is that, when we acquired the assets of Tucker, we also brought on their data team that they had. So we've gone through the process of kind of onboarding all of that, and are still going through the process of onboarding that data, putting it into a PIM, and making sure that we have as much rich product data as possible. This includes fitment data. And going through that process of generating that data or translating the data from the data we get from the manufacturers and putting it into the standard, and then pushing that through, our system, so it's available on our website as part of our search functionality. It's available on our API, so that our dealers who want to have this product data wherever they want, and most likely their e-commerce or marketplace sites, but wherever they need that, that they have access to it in a streamlined format that doesn't require them to treat it necessarily different from an integration standpoint, whether it's an automotive or a power sports product, at least from dealing with the product data side of things. So that's kind of how we're looking at it right now, is how do we just make it as much as possible like another product while still respecting the nuances and differences that come with some categories or the ways that, a power sports product may differ than the automotive side of the world. But mainly it's a lot of just the legwork on Turn 14 side to just actually ensure that the product data itself is available to dealers, because we know that's critical when they're, if nothing else, just to find the product, right? To go on our website and say, I have a Harley Davidson this, or a Yamaha this, or Kawasaki, whatever, and being able to find the appropriate products that fit that with as minimal effort as possible. Because we know not every customer is going to come with a part number to our website to find that specific product. They're going to do some searching and finding in part of our catalog.
Right. With all your work that you're doing, are you going out to the industry and saying, we need some standards here and here's what we've done to try to better the data, or is that not to that point yet?
So, our kind of philosophy at this point, and the kind of opinion we have, is that Aces and Pies already has a power sports database, and I think we should continue to go down that path of using that.
Because I know SEMA supports all that with SEMA data and everything, right?
Exactly. So our opinion is that, while there are probably differences and nuances that need to be worked out, by and large, that standard can continue to mutate and evolve to continue to support power sports. And that's our current thinking. But we realize in the setup and the environment we're in today, it's not necessarily easy for a power sports manufacturer to be able to do that migration. So, we're taking it on our end because we know what it looks like. We know kind of how it should be handled. And we think by doing so, we can make it, it allows us to standardize what is non-standard coming to us, and then, distribute the fruits of the labor to our dealers by giving them the data through our API in a nice standardized format.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Actually, what you're mentioning there earlier about Turn 14 bringing muscle, it is really important to have consistent data. I remember the day when the dealer came to me and said, okay, I want to load this manufacturer's data. They told me I should web scrape their website. And I'm not going to name names. I protect the identity of the innocent, but they're two different perspectives, right? So from one perspective, the manufacturer is saying, well, we already have that data and we've done such a good job putting it on our website. You should just take it from the website. And I totally get that. It's logical. From the consuming end of it, that's like saying, okay, every single one of you out there who wants to sell my products, go into a browser and start clicking save a whole bunch of times, if they don't know how to run a web scraper, which most people don't, right? And don't want to. So when Turn 14 brings the muscle and is like, hey, wait, let's do this better. They work with the manufacturer and they provide the voice of the customer to them to explain, hey, UPC codes are a really cool thing, and images are great, and accurate fitment is really important. And so it's in everybody's best interest. We want to reduce the number of returns, increase the customer experience, and it really does start with the data. So that's a really key part of the whole process.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And I think the nice thing about this, right, is because we have the data in-house, that means that, it's common knowledge, right, that, when you submit an RMA through turn14.com, you give a reason, right, why you return a product. So if you say that I'm returning this product because it didn't fit, right, or the fitment data was bad, right, if a dealer says that, hey, I used the fitment data that was provided and this wasn't accurate, right, the nice thing about being able to own the data, which is technically a problem depending upon what data provider you use on the automotive world, right, is you could know this data is wrong, but you're relying upon the manufacturer to go fix it. The blessing and the curse of having it of your own and your own systems where you can maintain it yourself is it's your data now, but at least you can fix it. So that's kind of an exciting prospect for us, is that we can actually go, and when we get that feedback from a dealer, right, and we know the data is not right, if it's one of our products, right, we'll we probably know what our own products should fit and right, and if it's an issue, it's a typo, and we can fix it, and we can take ownership of that. But if it's a third party, right, collaborating with the third party brand and saying, hey, this is the data you gave us, this is what we're getting feedback on, like help us figure out kind of where the gap is so that we can correct it, right, and I think that communication will be key, but it'll also allow us the ability to be able to evolve quickly without having to have too many layers of communication gaps between where we're getting that feedback and actually being able to fix the problem and quickly, get it out to and on all of our data feeds that there's a change and an update.
Yeah, I think bottom line, you guys care, right?
It's huge for customer experience, right? You want to have a good customer experience. You don't want having returns cost money too. But can you tell us about your relationship, Turn 14 Distribution's relationship with Data Here to There? Because we're talking about what, their API and how you've worked with that and making the customer experience better. And even the fact is, from a website guy, right? How do you bring all that data and that information into a website without having to copy and paste and do things like that, right? Or work with a spreadsheet?
Oh, absolutely. And don't get me wrong, there's a time and place always for Excel or Google Sheets, right? But it probably shouldn't be the only tool in your tool belt, right? We've been working with Data Here There since I did a Gmail search because, that's the source of truth for everything. And the first email Jay, at least, and I have is back at the end of November of 2018. So we're a couple days shy of 7 years since that happened. Or 6 years. I can't do math on the fly. 6 years. So it's been a while, right? This is definitely one of the longer partnerships or relationships we've had with an integration partner. Yeah, we've had several customers that are noteworthy that are out there that we've collaborated on together, to build out, what does it look like to pull fitment from Turn 14? How do you properly pull inventory data? All those kind of data points that customers care about. So we worked a lot with Data Here there, like we do with all of our integration partners who want to build a successful integration with us through whatever means they're doing that. And, I think it was maybe, Jay, at the end of 2019, something like that. It was before the pandemic, I know it launched in the middle of the pandemic, but it started when I was still in the office. Jay had approached us about, hey, I think there's a good amount of tech here that we can actually build a pretty solid integration to. We start off with Shopify. The first company ever who had come to us and said, we want to build something as an app on a platform. So obviously, there were some internal discussions we had to have about what does that look like and, what would the rules of engagement be, for lack of a better description. But obviously we ended up coming to an agreement on how that would work. Or what we wanted that to look like, at least from our perspective. And we still to this day collaborate very heavily with Data Here There on, what that app looks like, what, future iterations of integrations between us and Data Here There's products looks like. And now it's, an app on both the Shopify and the BigCommerce store. It's one of the most heavily used integration options out there of the platforms that exist. So we're super happy with how that all came to fruition. I think, we never like to say that one option is best for every single customer, right? Because it's not the case, right? Every customer is a little bit different and every customer needs a little bit different way to integrate. But I think the way that app operates is it meets a lot of needs of a lot of customers, and we get a lot of, positive feedback on, what they're able to do with it without, having to be feeling like you're a programmer, right, to make it work. And there's definitely options out there where you feel like you're, in an airplane behind the cockpit because there's too many bells and whistles and dials, and it's too complicated. And it's, I think the app experience has a lot of functionality, for many dealers not being overbearing on too many dials and too many things that you can click that you get easily confused or do the wrong thing. So we're really excited to see that. And, we're also using these, I mentioned earlier on our Turn 14 Power Sports brands, our brands that are our exclusive brands. We're using Data Here There's tech to power those websites. So, obviously we think that they're certainly good for that as well. So we're excited to use that as well for our own websites that we have that allow customers to see the products, do the fitment search to find, the Kuryakin, whatever they're looking for, product they need, or the Pro Taper handlebar that fits their bike, or whatever their search kind of thing is, they're able to see the product listings and the product data because of the Turn 14 API integration through the BigCommerce app. So we're super excited about it. It's been a really great partnership, and we're always excited to work with them to build out new and exciting functionality.
Yeah, it's exciting, and we're really happy and proud to be working with you guys on that. And earlier you were mentioning there about those first days, the conversations that we had about deep Turn 14 functionality were really critical. So things like live shipping rates, where you can get like spot market pricing on your shipping and have that automatically put in the cart. Nobody else is doing that in the industry. You took the time to explain, okay, well, this is why we think it's important, and this is allowing us to give them the best possible shipping rate. And it's complex. I have no idea what's behind all of that, but I'm sure it's pretty, pretty magical. And there's like elves and fairies that jump out and do things for you guys.
I'll tell you,
But
for the e-commerce sites we built, I just wanted to say this: shipping has been one of the biggest struggles, especially when it's not integrated like with something like that, where we build a number of client sites that have their own products, right? They're not tied to a distribution center or anything like that. Getting that shipping figured out is a nightmare, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, and so having those rates through the API, at the moment, and it could be different today to tomorrow, but you can be sure you're getting the best rate. So we had conversations around that. There was also smaller ones too, like about case lot quantities. So these are things that have to be done correctly and have a very specific Turn 14 flavor to them, or preferred shipping. So having the ability to leverage your preferred shipping rate and have that flow through. Some of the conversations were maybe a bit more heated, where it's like Dan is like, hey, you guys got to do this. Like this has to be working properly. You got to get this done. And so we snapped to attention and like, okay, how do we do this? And we'd have those design discussions and figure out, okay, based on the data that you have, how do we do this? How do we make it easy for the user to understand? Some of the things we have to hide a little bit because it's more for the advanced users. We don't want to put it right in the face of a novice user because it might overwhelm them, but the features are all there. But yeah, it's a fantastic relationship where we can go through those new features, go through existing ones and see, well, are things not working? How do we improve things? So there was an issue with I guess the flow of doing the order and tracking. So there was a case where, it's in the Shopify system. Yeah. So if somebody placed an order, it went through, but then was canceled, let's say. Within the Turn 14 system, they can cancel it. Shopify would be blissfully unaware and it would say, oh, that's still there. I'm going to keep watching it and we'll try and get the tracking number for it, but it's locked and we couldn't unlock it without doing some developer magic, each time. And so anytime somebody had an issue like that, we got to fire up Postman or start poking away at the Shopify API. But we identified that as an issue. Dan came up with some great suggestions on it, and we totally streamlined that now, so they can flick a little option in their order settings that says, I understand that if I hit cancel in Shopify, it doesn't mean it's going to cancel. Like we're gonna let them know that there's still a whole process that they need to follow, but they can release a bit of that safety if they know what they're doing, just to streamline it. But those discussions are really critical, and I appreciate that we can have those on a regular basis.
So we talked about shipping, a lot of different really cool aspects of the app, Turn 14 distribution app. But Dan, if I was somebody that was looking at using an app like this to integrate, what is the most valuable things I need to look at? What I need to think about and to make a decision, right, on using the Turn 14 distribution app?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we talk to our dealers about a lot of different things when they're making their decisions, right? It's, what's your process for adding the catalog, right? What kind of catalog adding do you want to do? Do you have an existing website? Are you adding, or is this a brand new site that you're spinning up for the first time, right? There's different levels of complexity when you do sort of those kind of things, right? For a lot of people, I think the Turn 14 distribution app's a great option when you're starting brand new, clean slate, right? You either exactly what you want to load, or the categories or the brands that you want to load. there's a lot of like, this is generically how I want to handle things, and I'm going to go in and tweak things like pricing or whatnot down at the brand level, right? When you might have a brand that doesn't give you any price lists, so it's essentially the equivalent of the Wild West to pricing, right? How much margin do you want to make, and how competitive do you want to be? As opposed to, maybe a brand where, there's an authorized dealer program, and a dealer needs to be super conscious about the fact of, I cannot sell it below this price, or I'm going to get some very maybe not as friendly emails in my inbox saying, please don't, please stop it, or we're going to cut you off. And because we feel that's an important part of being our vendor relationship, right? If dealers aren't being compliant in, adhering to MAP when there's a MAP policy, right? Minimum advertised price. Then we need to be part of kind of the people that are keeping it to be a fair space, so that the people who are playing by the rules can sell.
So within the app, you do that then? So within the app, you educate them, hey, you can't do this or don't do that or whatever. This is some recommendations.
Jay might be able to speak better to how specifically the app handles that. But I mean, so on our end, we're passing back the data on price lists. So, right. So if a product does have a minimum advertised price, then Data Heater there has the appropriate flags to know, hey, this is by default, and I think Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the default settings essentially are like, don't sell below MAP, right? So that if there's ever a MAP price list provided, the dealer's not going to accidentally go, ooh, let me sell it at a 5% markup, which no dealer in their right mind probably would do. But like, let's say hypothetically, right, and that's below MAP, then the Data Heater there's app would automatically kick it up to, oh no, like the minimum floor is this, because it's more than the 5% margin I was planning on making, which is great, obviously, but it also keeps me compliant, right? So that it's at that level where we don't allow dealers otherwise to sell below publicly on the internet.
That's right. Yeah, actually, for the first 2 years that we had the app out there was no other option than to go below or above MAP or above, right? So eventually there was, I think, some special brands where they were doing MAP holidays maybe for specific clients, and then it's like, okay, now we want the ability to turn off MAP enforcement, and so that was really an exception for the app. So it's there. So what's the best feedback you've received from dealers lately?
So it's funny. This is just this week. There was a Turn 14 distribution made a post on our LinkedIn page, and somebody, it was about the Visionary Award, not to talk about myself more on this, but it's timely, I guess, because we talked about it already. And in the comment section, somebody actually wrote a comment about the app, basically talking about, that they work at a retailer now, but they've been in the automotive manufacturing side of things for a decade, right? So they've been around the industry, and they had a lot of positive feedback to say, in this world where we talked about the fact that there are standards, right? And there are companies that you can go get product data from, but you still have to go to for each brand, what data company has that product data, go to them, get the product data, pull it down, put it into wherever you're doing. Yeah. There's a lot of steps there, right? And so, the dealer's talking about how it's great that, I sign up with, I put my API credentials in, I decide the brands I want to load, I put in my criteria, and it, the app just pulls in all the data and creates those listings as needed, and the fitment data gets put in there and everything like that. And, that app is really the only one for specifically in our industry for a specific WD that really does that. So lots of nice things, obviously, to say about that, which, is exactly why we were excited to partner on an app like that, because we think that's kind of like the holy grail, right? Is to be able to have, say, what do you want to sell? You can be as specific or not about what that looks like. Ideally, you really should be specific, right? You shouldn't just go say, I want to be the Walmart of car parts and list every single product that we have.
Yeah, don't do that.
That's not a good idea. It's never a good idea. However, being able to say, here are the 10 brands I want to sell, or, hey, I want to sell everything that fits a BMW or that fits, a Honda Civic or whatever, right? However you want to slice it or dice it. Or I want to be an expert in brakes, so I want to sell every product that's under the product category of brakes. You can do it a lot of different ways, but the app gives you the power to do that and pulls in any available data that's available. And then, obviously the dealer can augment that or create their own product data on top of that. But at least, it gives them a nice starting point. So they're not having to go create every single listing one by one or do all that again, when we were talking about before, Excel and Google Sheets are great, but if that's like your only tool in your tool belt, it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of manual effort. And the biggest feedback we get from dealers, right, if we add a new brand, is it's the deep sigh of the amount of work that it's going to take to figure out the products that apply to their niche, and then pull those out and build the product descriptions, get all the images, and then get it into the Shopify format to upload it, and then upload it, and then find out that you didn't have something right, or you have to do updates or stuff like that. And, that takes hours or days or weeks, depending upon, how many you're doing and at what scale. So having an app that can do a lot of that legwork for you, and then you can just use Shopify's UI to go modify things, adjust things or whatnot. I think that's super powerful. And it's a big reason why we've been building out our integration partner network, because we realize the value in that. We realize the immense value in, if I want to sell a brand, what's the easiest way to enable a dealer to go sell that brand wherever they're trying to sell it, so that that's not the bottleneck, right? The bottleneck's then, okay, now I need to figure out pricing, or something that they actually have control over, that, they can do the research to be able to figure out based upon price lists and what the market's doing, to know where they should be pricing and what they should be doing.
They don't have to worry about the tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming they don't have to worry about shipping, sizes, weights, things like that. The price, if cost goes up, that gets automatically adjusted. They don't, because the biggest thing we talked earlier is shipping, but also price increases. If you have 5,000 products in your store and you have to do that manually or do an upload or whatever, that becomes very monotonous and time consuming, right?
And it's funny because we'll talk to dealers, right? And we'll talk to them, and they'll be interested in integrating, and then they'll come to us and say, okay, cool. And then we go, yeah, there's a monthly cost associated with this, and they're like, ooh, like this costs money. I'm like, okay, so I want you to step back for a second. I was like, I'm going to assume for the purposes of this conversation, and at some point this video will age, and we'll laugh at the number I pull out here, but let's assume that I think you're worth more than you. If you're a business owner, right, you probably think your hourly wage is worth more than $20 an hour, right, for being a professional and all that kind of stuff, right? It's probably more than that, but let's say that for hypothetical purposes. If you spend more than 5 hours a week, 5 hours a month, or multiply that out for some of the more enterprisey level softwares out there, right, that are thousands of dollars a month, right? How much is your time worth? How much time are you spending each day uploading updated inventory? Because maybe you're not going to touch pricing every day, right? Because pricing doesn't literally change every day. But again, if you go under that philosophy too, and Black Friday, Cyber Monday just ended when we made this podcast, right? And how many different brands went on sale, or throughout that changed whether they had a MAP policy or not, or what the MAP policy was. Was it a 10 to 20 point off what normal MAP was? And costs are changing. They're at different points in the sale. We may have had a certain number % off, and that might have changed over Black Friday and Cyber Monday to give you additional points off, right? All these things change throughout the week. If you were trying to keep on track of all of those pricing changes, you would miss something. And if that missing something meant that your pricing wasn't at the appropriate point to compete with everybody else in the market, then you've lost all the sales for that brand or for that product, right? Because you didn't
the time to deal with that, right?
If not just for the fact that the sales you lose is a problem, it's also the fact that you didn't have accurate data, right? Or if you oversell or undersell, right? If we get a product into stock and you didn't update your inventory quickly enough and it sells out because somebody else got it in an automated fashion, you lose the sales there too. So these are all things, when we talk to dealers and the cost is a thing that they feel is prohibitive to go forward. It's like, well, think about the number of hours of your time or somebody on your team, right, that you're saving because you're not going in and creating an inventory file to upload to your website, or you're not going through and auditing what prices changed or what price list changed, and therefore what is the cost that I'm listing on my e-commerce site going to do. These are all things that take time and effort and skill and detail, right? Attention to details. Like if you're just hand doing these things, that's a lot of work and a lot of detail. And if I was doing it, I'd do it wrong. Like I can tell you definitively, I would mess up a formula somewhere. So
yeah, concrete example there would be like, let's say if you're running a store that sells European parts and American Muscle keeps showing up, or when you do an import, I've got products that really don't fit, and it's jagged looking, I guess, or it's sort of jarring. You look at it and it's like, wait, that shouldn't be there. Like one of these things is not like the other, and it's an American Muscle part. And so, yeah, in the early days, I I was thinking about this and I thought, wouldn't it be great? Well, we'll call it continuous curation. And the name has never caught on. I'm going to keep pushing it and see if if it takes off. It's probably not very sexy, but hey. But the idea there is that you set your preferences and you say, well, yeah, I'm selling European parts, and not only that, I'm focusing on accessories and maybe suspension and brakes, because you've got a niche. That's what you want to focus on. And so, yeah, with the filter settings in the app, we have those there for that purpose. So they can just define what they want in terms of, curation. This is my set of preferences, and then set it and forget it. Right? So as new products come out, so there's a new SKU, a set of SKUs that come out, they don't have to look at that list in the catalog every single day and say, oh, I want that, because they've already told the app what they like. But yeah, it does save time, and we hope it's worth the value of the subscription. So maybe looking forward, taking the crystal ball a bit, where do you see improvements coming on the Turn 14 data feeds and the system?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, and that's something we're constantly asking ourselves, right? We're really proud of what we've built, and I think what we've built is really robust and meets a lot of dealers' needs. We know it's not perfect, though. We know it's not all inclusive or all comprehensive of every single point that every dealer would want. So we're always looking at what kind of is next. And while I think Chris would come down and hurt me if I told everybody the secrets on the podcast. What I will say, at least, is, kind of alluding to your point earlier of how are we dealing with power sports. We know there's things that we're going to have to augment the API to better support the power sports industry. If nothing else, right, the product categories now, like apparel that we're in, that have some additional fields or mandates of, what color or what size, right, are these products, right? If you've got a black version that's in large versus a green one that's in medium, right? You need to be able to tell that without just like parsing the description of the product or the title of the product to know it. So that enables, the ability to build variants of a product, right? Hypothetically, if we give that level of data. So we're trying to figure out what that looks like. Obviously, it's probably no secret that that's not how a lot of things in the automotive necessarily world work. There are products that have variants, but it's not quite as typical as an apparel market. So that's obviously new for us. So we're still doing the R&D, I would call it, essentially, on how to get that right. But that's something that I think is important to us. And we know that when an end user, if nothing else, right, if they go to Answer Racing or one of our brand's websites, right, that's how they're going to look for it. So we figure if we're building our websites using our API as the back end, and we're going to allow a dealer to be able to see the variants of a specific jacket or a specific set of pants or gloves or whatnot, we should do the same and provide that data through to our dealers. So that's kind of always our North Star is essentially having consistency between our platforms and things like that.
That's interesting you say that, because I'm thinking about, like, for automotive parts, you have aces and pies. That doesn't equate with apparel, right?
It doesn't. Well, let's put it that way. I mean, there are certain things that what's the old adage, right? Anything that a hammer will make anything look like a nail, right? I'm sure you can make anything look like a part in a pies file. It's not going to have aces, obviously. We're not going to start making fitment for people, right? That probably doesn't translate well.
Small, medium, large, extra large. Come on, there's some fitment there,
right? Exactly.
It's cool, it's almost like there's a continuum and there's like two endpoints. Like fitment goes from one direction and variants go from another. Like with fitment, it's like, hey, I've got a 2010 Mazda 3. I want to see what fits it.
Right.
Whereas when you're looking for apparel, it's like, ooh, I found a really cool shirt. Is it in my size?
Right.
Whereas I wouldn't look for oil filters and say, now make that fit my Mazda 3. Like,
right.
But that's what a variant is. So it's kind of like, it's interesting how they complement each other, but yet they do different things.
Yeah. And to your point, right, there are different points in the customer journey from a user experience standpoint. So it's being mindful of that and figure out those, those dotting those I's and crossing those T's. The only other thing I'll say in terms of kind of what the future looks like, I think, we're always cognizant, again, like I mentioned earlier, of feature parity. So, we have our data export on our website. There are very few, but there's a handful of columns that we have on our CSV on our website that aren't on our API yet, or don't behave in the same way on our API that it does on the data export, for better or for worse. So we want to build consistency in those things, and that's definitely something that is something that's important to us, and will be something that we'll be enhancing in the future. And finally, kind of in line with that, and some of those attributes that are missing, we know that when a dealer is, when we're talking about pricing earlier, right? Giving the right data at the right time with the right appropriate context is super important when it comes to promotions. So we're looking at making sure that we're providing all the appropriate information to be able to give accurate, to take, maybe not accurate, but the most robust, kind of full picture for an automation to be able to appropriately price products, and be able to give flags and signals on things. So we're continuing to looking at those kind of things and figuring out what the right way to do it is, and pass that through so that they can appropriate price products and know what they should be doing based upon with some additional information. So these are all things I think that are super important to dealers, and we're excited to be working on, and we always take dealer feedback, whether obviously we can never promise to fix it tomorrow when they give us an idea today, right? But we're always listening. I have a constant backlog of features that I coordinate with our development team to prioritize on, how we can make the user experience better, right? Whether it's more data on the API, thinking about in the future how we allow people to get that data. These are all things that are constantly top of mind for me, at least, and our development team, and figuring out how we can partner together to make some of those things a reality based upon the feedback that we get from our dealers and our partners, right? If all of our partners are using our API just as much as a dealer's developer might be using an API, so they get a lot of feedback too, and we rely a lot on their feedback to know, hey, we've had 5 dealers say we would really like this to behave this way. Or have this data so that we can display this data on the website. Sometimes, as we've talked about, with having product data coming from the manufacturer, right? It's dependent sometimes on the manufacturer to give us that data so that we can pass it along to a dealer to put on their website, right? So, like, if a brand doesn't have images or product descriptions that they provide to us, we're not going to manufacture that, with the exception of obviously Power Sports, where that's, we're getting that data and we're making it available, right? But we're not these brands, right? We shouldn't. It would be bad if we started guessing what fitment would be of another brand's products. That would. We were talking about that return rate. That return rate would go up real high if we start guessing what things fit, right? So that's what we're looking at, right? Is we're looking at how do we make sure, as we continue to evolve, grow in product lines, and we're continuing to mature kind of our endpoints, where are the low-hanging fruit, or where are the critical new things that we have that we're not providing necessarily that data for yet, and we want to make sure that we're giving that data so that we give our dealers the details to make the informed decisions.
Well, and having a backlog is a good thing. I mean, it means people are interested and they're giving you feedback and they're passionate about, that system. And like you're saying, if 5 dealers say, hey, we'd really like to see this feature, that's good. That's good stuff. Like, I think it's arrogant to think, in isolation, somebody can develop the perfect system, right, without talking to any customers. And it just doesn't happen that way. So having, customers that, really care about Turn 14 distribution, they care about the data, they're passionate about it, they're passionate about the brands. Holy crap. Like, in terms of, brand religion and seeing the stickers everywhere, it's out there. And so it's an amazing group of people to work with when they have that and they create a backlog. I guess backlog has a bit of a negative connotation, meaning that there's too much to do for the developers to actually keep up. So therefore there's too much, but it's a pipeline. It's a fun things to do down the road.
Oh yeah, absolutely, for sure.
So Dan, since I built my first e-commerce site way back in 2007, things have come a long way. How do you feel that the Turn 14 distribution app has impacted the industry?
I mean, I think for the dealers that are using it, I think it gives another very approachable lever for people who want to get into that space to start an e-commerce site, right? You need to have the resources to do it, right? They need to have somebody who can dedicate time to being able to do it, right? It's not this is not the field of dreams. If you install the Turn 14 app on your Shopify store, you will magically get sales. This is not how this works. It's never how it worked. It doesn't matter whether it's that app or another app, right? There's work and time involved. But I think the way that it's made it easy to do it, I think the robustness of the functionality is definitely great. I mean, like Jay talked about, there's several unique functions of the Turn 14 app because of the combination of, specifically for Shopify, right, the live shipping rates. It's a huge boon for our international customers, where like the number one comment I think we get from them is, what is it going to cost to ship, right? Because international shipping is the wild west of shipping. And I get that question, where's your rate card for that? And I was like, you realize that that's not really how this works. It's a little bit more, it's not like, going from zone 1 to zone 4 in UPS, right? Like that's not how this works. That's international shipping is a whole can of worms. So being able to concretely say, yeah, it's going to ship for $300 to Dubai, right? Or it's going to cost $45 to ship to Canada, and that's going to include the duties and tariffs that are, inclusive of that, so that the end user when receives it doesn't have to guess what they're going to pay in fees or stuff like that. Like these are all things that are super cool because, Data Here, they spent the time to figure out how to make it work on Shopify, and we have, fortunately enough for them, the data behind the scenes to be able to make it just function nicely. So, I think that's super nice that there's some really cool functionality there that can support a variety of customers with a variety of needs. And I think the barrier to entry is approachable for many more dealers than certainly virtually all dealers than those who have a computer science degree to be able to go build it themselves, which would be a Herculean task. But
we've talked to a number of Data Here to Theirs customers. We've had interaction with them where they're a one-person business and they've spun up a site,
Yeah.
So
sure.
what are the biggest trends you've noticed in the automotive aftermarket?
Yeah, I feel like anytime we talk about trends, we have to talk about COVID, right? And what that did to the world, right? And how end users think about finding where they're going to buy from, right? But before 2020, if you were going to go buy a product, at least for me, and maybe I'm slightly old school despite being a tech guy, like I like going to the store and being touchy-feely and, looking at stuff, especially when I'm making a big ticket purchase. Maybe for smaller stuff, I feel comfortable doing it online. But, in a COVID area, which forced everybody to go, okay, if I want to go buy something, I'm going to have to go figure it out online because I may not be able to get to a store that's open to be able to find it. And that's how you found out that a business exists that you could buy parts from, right? If you didn't already have a preferred vendor to go buy parts from, you're going on the internet or you're checking out your local shop, maybe that you get your car inspection at, right? And seeing, they sell parts, right? Let me go see if I can get windshield wiper blades or whatever, they're looking for. So we've seen a lot of, the 2020s has, to me, been the era of getting brick and mortar digitized, right? If at the minimum, right, you have an online presence to tell people I exist, but a lot of them are saying, not only do I exist, but here is the catalog of products that I have available. And, like we mentioned earlier, a good e-commerce site won't just have the Walmart car parts of everything that's in our catalog, right? But where their niches, where their brands that they really are passionate about are, or if they specialize in a service, the product catalog that they use and rely on in their shop that their customers would want to be able to display, like, hey, I have this kind of oil or whatever. So we definitely see that, right? That there's that side of things where the bringing the brick and mortar online has definitely been a thing that wasn't just an early 2020 fad, but I think is a thing that is going to stay and will continue to evolve because discoverability is so important for a brick and mortar store, and e-commerce is a great way to bring in-person discoverability. I mean, you can have products pick up in store, or you can just say that, hey, I have access to this product. And, now that you can go back into stores again, right, you could go and walk into a store and ask them, hey, about this thing I saw on your website, and it gives them a sales opportunity, and they don't have to do you carry this or have this, right? If they have the products that matter on their site, they don't have to go through that whole, do you have this, or do you have access to this, or whatever. That's much less likely to have that because you can just manage the catalog.
And I'm sure that a lot of there's shops out there that have a retail side, right? They're also installing parts. It probably gave them a better opportunity or more things to install for their customers, because the customer can go on their website, see more products that are
Absolutely.
offered, and also say, I like this, I want this on my car. I have no idea how to install it. Can you install it for me? Before, they might have said, we do sales and service for performance, but couldn't show items. So the people's imagination were kind of left to whatever they were thinking about. If they're going on the website and they can go through all these products, wow, that looks pretty cool. Can you install that for me too? So they get the sale, plus they get the service, right?
Exactly. And I think the other thing too that this online era has brought in is kind of a demand for a certain level of service. And what I mean by that is not just in the customer service, right, of being able to ask the questions, get quick responses, but also on the fulfillment side, right? There are certain, I won't name them, but there's certain online companies out there that have kind of forced the persona of everything needs to come in 2 days or less, right? Or even at some point, right, it needs to come same day. If I order it 12 o'clock in the afternoon, I want it on my doorstep by 9 o'clock tonight, right?
Yeah, it
And
gets airdropped in, right?
right. I mean, we haven't deployed drone technology yet. We're not at that point yet. I haven't heard that's on the roadmap yet. But we've tried to evolve some of these things, right? A big reason why we added the Indy warehouse, right, is because we knew that one warehouse provided such a massive 1-day transit zone. I mean, that goes all the way down to Kentucky for 1-day transit zone. That's it. And all the way over to Wisconsin in the West, right?
Oh,
it's
really?
a huge
Wow.
1-day transit zone with our carrier partners, which is fantastic because that's a huge increase in the customer base and also of end users that we can support with 1-day transit time. So when you order, again, if you go to somebody's website, right, and you order, it's 6:30, 6:45 right in the evening, and they hit buy on Shopify, and then hypothetically the Distributors app slings the order over to us. They probably will have a tracking number on the website by like 8 o'clock that evening Eastern time, and then the product could be out to them the next day if it's in the 1-day transit zone. But as I alluded to earlier, some people that's not good enough. or the old, I got a truck on the lift and I told the guy I was going to get him, back up and running today and I need that part now kind of thing. Just a couple weeks ago, we launched Roadie across all 4 of our Turn 14 distribution facilities. So what that does is it's a same-day service that's technically under the UPS umbrella. But as long as you place an order before 4 p.m. Eastern and you select Roadie as your shipping option, it should have the product about 2 to 3 hours later after time.
Oh, really? That's amazing.
So
Wow.
it's a huge advantage for those customers that need that same day service, right? It's really impressive. So I should say for clarity purposes that delivery time range, we'll pick it and have it ready generally within 60 to 120 minutes. And then it's usually within an hour or two from the time it's ready that it'll be, at your doorstep. But still, the fact that that's all available is really cool for dealers. Right now we're in a 30-mile radius from our warehouses. We've already increased the size of packages that we can take through that. So larger and bulkier items can go through there, not quite LTL sized or weighted, but still, you could, if you want to order 4 tires and you need it for your truck, like you could go, Roadie can probably take it to your house if it's within, 30 miles of one of our DCs and they've got the product in stock, which I think is super exciting for, kind of pushing into the what's next, right? And in some cases, Roadie's going to be cheaper than the equivalent traditional carrier next day air, right? So
really?
Yeah,
Wow.
It's a really competitively priced service, which we were really impressed by.
I don't want to get in deep into it, but we didn't talk about inventory. So you got live inventory, I'm assuming too. So if somebody's on any of the sites that are tied to the Turn 14 distribution app, they're going to see actual inventory that's available, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And they don't have to update that either. That's automatically updated, I'm assuming, right?
And we're not just doing a daily upload, right? This is Distributors querying us several times throughout the day and pushing out those updates.
Yeah, within the hour. Yeah, too. We've gone to
That's cool. That's important. That's a time saver too, right? Because they don't have to worry about managing and keeping inventory levels in all their products, right? It's done automatically, right?
Exactly. And when you're doing the checkout, and if you have the live shipping rates enabled on Shopify, that'll tell you transit times too. So like you'll know that like, hey, I'm in a 1 day zone, so I can pick FedEx Ground and get it tomorrow. Or I'm within the roadie zone, so I know that I can select roadie and select that as my shipping method because I know I really want that. Or, if it's one of our worst case scenarios where it's a product that's only left in stock in Pennsylvania and I'm in California and I need that product tomorrow, right? You can know that, hey, I should actually invest in the next day or the 2 day option because I need it quicker. And then you'll have the dealer can provide transparent pricing that's accurate, right? So they don't have to say, oh, maybe it'll cost like $25 to ship. And of course they picked like an amp step or something like that. And that costs like, $150 to ship next day or something like that, something ridiculous that, blows the budget out of the water. Right. So having that transparency and that flexibility to help that end user get exactly what they want in whatever time frame it ends up making sense for them without them having to be hand wavy and worry about the margin loss associated with that is great from that perspective.
Well, that's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can always get Roadie to throw in a Big Mac on the way if they deliver that quick. It's
There
like
you go.
automotive meets Uber Eats or something.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. So AIM Expo is coming up in February. Turn 14 distribution has a massive presence there. With that in mind, in power sports in general, what's the biggest opportunity for dealers in the power sports space, and how can Turn 14 distribution technology help them?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just automation. I think there is a misnomer in the power sports industry, and I think it's derived from the complexity and the lack of standardization of product data that doing e-commerce is hard. And to be clear, right, we've addressed it earlier on here. E-commerce is not easy, right? There's work that's involved. There are certain parts of it that are set it and forget it, but it is a labor of love in itself, and it's trying to make the monotonous parts automatic and the parts so that you can focus the time on the parts that do require your time and attention and the labor of love on it, right? So I think that's the biggest thing that we'd love to help educate the power sports industry on. The fact is that there are partners out there that can help you create the listings with good product data, that it can be done in a way that is efficient, that it can be done several times a day. It's not just one nightly upload of inventory that may or may not be, that will be old as soon as it's uploaded, right? And it may not have been uploaded right away as the file was generated, right? So, these are all, I think, critical things that are really important to raise the expectations and the bar of what a power sports dealer expects from not only the distributor and the data and the robustness that they provide, as well as the fulfillment experience, right? The same day shipping before 7 p.m., the 7 days a week support and shipping and tracking and all that kind of stuff. I think these are really cutting edge things that the power sports world isn't used to, or nor is expecting, nor is demanding. And, I think our hope is that when dealers see that and see the reliability of that and see the fact that the tooling is there, and obviously the Data Here There app is one of the many ways that they can do that. We hope they take advantage of that and understand the value of us as a partner in that space, both from the tech that we're providing, from the service that backs that up, and the fulfillment kind of network that we have to help the end user or the dealer themselves, whatever part of the country they're in. So I'm excited to kind of talk about that at AIM Expo. I'm excited to meet with dealers to kind of champion that and push that. I know Jay, you and Data Here There will be there, so I'm very curious to see how dealers react to you being there for the first time and kind of being a new player in that at that show who hasn't been there before. We're excited to bring
chocolate bars for everybody.
There you go. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Cool. Well, got a couple more questions and we'll wrap this up. One of the things we talked about a lot of how the app, it will help speed up site build, to saving time, to better customer service. But, what's the most important things for shops to think about? Why should they be online?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing is to be online means that you're searchable, you're findable, you have a presence. Today, if you're searching for somebody to buy parts from, or even, for our brick and mortar friends, people who can do repair work, you have to be able to be found on Google search, on Google Maps. There should be a website where I can find your phone number, find out what services you offer. From the e-commerce standpoint, what brands of products do you sell? What's my pricing look like? Do you have this part, or is this going to be, is this special order and I'm going to have to wait for it? And, managing all those kind of expectations and questions and curiosities. So to me, if I'm going, right, if I were an end user, right, which I am an end user, right, I get my car done and I get repairs done. If I was going out and finding a place to go get, last year, this time I blew my tire. I got a flat tire or whatnot, or a nail in my tire. My tire was leaking, and I went online to figure out what places could do tire repair near me, right? And I found some place that was right around the corner, and I called them and figured it out, right? Because the contact information was there. They had the information they need. So I've lived that, right? I couldn't take it. My normal dealership I take it to was way too far away. I was not trusting driving my car, 30 some minutes away to my dealership that I love. I needed to go to somewhere that was right around the corner. But that's because they were online. They had a presence. I could find out what services they offered. If I needed a part, I would look to see if they have the part.
Well, exactly. With the part thing, there's a standard SEO searching, right? Just searching for service near me, but also searching for specific part numbers or part names and things. That gives shops a better opportunity to show up, right? If they have that inventory that on their site, right?
Exactly. So, I think it all kind of works together that, the more you can share, the more that you can, show of yourself, the more likely it is that you're going to be discoverable. And, and it's not just building a site, right? The site is, as a core component, is kind of like the backbone of it, but there's more beyond that, right? Having a social media presence, having just having a presence in your community, right? Having a local presence, because word of mouth is a huge thing too. It's all of these kind of like different tentacles that you have to manage, or at least have exist in order for it all to work together. Because we've seen that too. There's some businesses that we work with, our dealers, who have a very heavy local presence, right? Like everybody in the area knows that this is the place you go to for this, right? It's the same thing with, if you buy a car, you probably have a dealership that's preferred. If you ask somebody what's the best insert whatever OEM dealership in your area, there's going to be distinct opinions. Or on the verse side, they're going to have other opinions of some dealers too, right? It's not always going to be sun. It's not all going to be pretty, but that stuff matters. But then, right, if you name drop a company, you're going to go look them up online and see and look about them. So having somewhere for them to go to when you get name dropped, and that they can find more out about you and what you do and what you have, that's all key.
So with all that said, if someone is, look, I want to start, I'm watching this podcast, I have a location, I actually have an account with Turn 14. I just don't have a website online store. What's the one piece of advice, whether they have an account with you or not, what's the one piece of advice that you'd give somebody looking to start an online shop?
Yeah, to me, the recipe for success is know what you want to focus on, right? Know what your niche is. where do you start, right? Where you start is not necessarily where you have to end, right? You can start out saying that I want to sell to a specific vehicle or a specific product category or whatever. Then you can grow from there. There's nothing that says you can't go add more brands later, right? Or you can't add more SKUs or evolve how your product catalog or anything like that. But to me, that's the first thing, right? Figure out what you want to sell. Who is your target customer? Then you figure out, okay, how do I want to build this, right? That's where you can come to, like, our team, our whole department is here. So you can email us and say, hey, I want to build a new site. And we can talk to you about what your goals are. And we can talk you through, what platforms make sense and work, what partners, like a data here to there app or whatnot, are viable. And we can help say, here's, the 2 or 3 different options that we think make sense based upon your use case and your level of comfort with technology. And, is this your second or third go around an e-commerce site, or is this your first one? Or, is this a enterprisey, I'm connecting to my ERP and I've got developers kind of situation, or, I'm a brick and mortar and this is my first go around and I'm going to need, more assistance or advice or hand holding or anything like that. These are all, right. We take all that to account to give them a couple of offerings, say, hey, go check out these things. Let us know what you think. And, if you find something you like, go sign up for it and go for it. And that's kind of how we handle that process, and how we try to, point them in the right direction and look at, not just, hey, you want to build a site, here's something that works, right? It's about aligning the customer with our partners and our platforms that we work with on a day-to-day basis to make that work. So, we're happy to be a part of that conversation. That's what we want to do, right? We want you to come to us and tell us you're excited about doing these things, and we want to help you get there and provide you a really great set of options to go do that. Because we know that if we're providing you a great marketplace of tools and platforms to work with, then you're going to have a much higher chance of success, because you won't have felt like, oh, this is the one thing that I have that could work, right? There's a great marketplace of things there.
Yeah, go get this app and have fun with that, right? You're not doing
exactly.
That, so, cool.
And obviously, as we've talked about here, a lot of them end up choosing as one of those options the Turn 14 app that Data Here There made. So that's certainly one of the many things that people end up choosing, or one of the other options that Data Here There makes. So.
Yeah, so it's looking a little bit dark behind you now in Pennsylvania. It's probably getting close to dinner time. The question that's on my mind: where is the best place to get a Philly cheesesteak?
Ooh, I feel like if I answer that with a direct place, then a third of Philly won't talk to me anymore, or something like that. But
that's serious.
It's if you ask anybody who's from Philly or the suburbs where their favorite places are, the two answers I would give you is not a place that calls it a Philly cheesesteak, because it's not a real Philly place. We call it a cheesesteak here because we're in Philly. It doesn't need to have
it's like French onion soup. They just
correct.
call it onion soup.
Right, France, exactly. Something like that. But I mean, I talked about going to Drexel and stuff like that. The best cheesesteaks I've ever had have been on a greasy food truck. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a very good way,
Hey, Dan, thanks for joining us today. This was fun. I learned a lot as a digital marketing guy and a website developer and things like that. You shared lots of insights today. Can you remind listeners how they can learn more about Turn 14 distribution and connect with you and things like that?
Absolutely. Well, if somebody who doesn't have a Turn 14 distribution account and are looking to become a customer of ours, if you go to turn14.com and you go to the Become a Dealer section, you can find our dealer application, and where one of our new accounts representatives will be happy to work with you to set up an account with us, assuming that you meet our kind of B2B requirements that are listed out on our site. If you're an existing customer and you're going, hey, I'm really excited to build a website now, then you can reach out to our team. If you go to the settings and data tab on turn14.com and go to the API tab, that's where you can sign up for an API account, and you'll have all our contact information there to be able to reach out to our team. And we're always happy to talk to you via email or set up a time to chat via phone or video call to talk to you more about what you're looking to do in e-commerce and find out what you've already done or what you'd like to do if it's something brand new, and figure out what options work there. And our team's always happy to help after you start getting set up, or once you're set up and have more questions. We're always happy to help and partner with our partners like Data Here There to figure out what's next and continue to build and evolve our integration options.
Thanks, Dan, for joining us today. We learned a lot about Turn 14 distribution. Remember to subscribe, leave us a comment, and share with your network. Catch us next time on the Data Here There Year Make Model Money podcast.
Join our next episode of the Year Make Model Money podcast, the DH2T Auto Parts podcast, where we'll interview another mover and shaker in the automotive parts industry and give your business the boost it needs to succeed in the online world.